What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss some brand new iOS 18 leaks. We're going to talk about more changes in iOS 17.5 before the final release, why Apple might be unveiling the M4 chip next week, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And if you want to stay up to date on everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and also check out the Apple Den newsletter if you prefer news in a written format. Okay, so let's start with the brand new iOS 18 leaks. And just a warning, if you're not a fan of spoilers, just look at those chapters down below and skip past this iOS 18 part. So according to Mark Gurman, iOS 18 is set to overhaul many of Apple's built-in applications, including Mail, Notes, Photos, and Fitness. And he was kind of vague here. It didn't really say anything specific about these applications. However, Apple Insider had multiple scoops this week on iOS 18 that were very specific. So the first one has to do with the calendar and reminders applications, because it looks like they're now going to be combined and you're going to be able to streamline your task management by allowing the calendar and reminders applications to talk to each other. So it looks like you're going to be able to manage your events and your reminders all from the calendar application. So that is a big deal if you're like me and you use the calendar application all the time to put in certain to-dos. Now it's going to be able to talk with reminders. That is going to be huge. And then they also reported on several new Safari features that are going to be changed in iOS 18. So the first one is very interesting. So this is intelligent search with AI enhanced browsing and summarization features. So this reminds me of the Arc search browser. I'm assuming that Apple's going to do something very similar to that, where every web page you could basically press a button and it will summarize what you see on screen. So no need for ChatGPT anymore if this is true. And that is just one example of where Apple's on-device AI is going to be so beneficial, because it's probably going to give you that summary in the snap of a finger. It's probably going to be very quick because everything is happening on device. No need to reach out to cloud servers. And then here's an interesting one. It looks like Safari in iOS 18 is going to have a web eraser for better content blocking. And they say that this is going to allow users to remove or erase specific portions of websites. So think blocking advertisements like banner ads, think blocking text, or even just certain parts of a website you can just erase. So this looks like it's going to Sherlock a lot of the ad blocking applications out there. I'm sure it's not going to be as sophisticated as them, but who knows? It could actually be just replacing an ad blocker altogether. And they say this is going to be persistent rather than limited to a browsing session. This means that Safari will remember the changes even after the original tab or window has been closed. And then they also say there's going to be an updated UI for Safari that's going to move key tools into one easy location. So it looks like that web eraser and the intelligent search are going to be located in that little AA menu in the address bar, not in the share sheet. And then the final thing they mention is an AI enhanced visual lookup feature. Now this is not expected in 2024, but it looks like in 2025 at some point, Apple is going to launch a more sophisticated, powerful visual search feature that I'm assuming is also going to utilize their on-device AI, their LLMs that are running on device for a more powerful spotlight search, lookup in photos, all of that. So yeah, this could be one of the biggest years ever for Safari on iOS, iPadOS, and even macOS. And then while we're on the subject of AI, let's talk about Apple's partnerships with OpenAI and Google, because we just saw a report this week that Apple is once again talking and negotiating with OpenAI for a potential partnership that would see OpenAI's features like ChatGPT integrated into iOS 18. And keep in mind, Apple is still talking with Google to license their Gemini model. And this new report from Bloomberg suggests that Apple could partner with both Google, and OpenAI. And of course, Gurman does reiterate that the iOS 18 AI features that are set to be unveiled at the Worldwide Developers Conference will be based on the in-house model that Apple has been working on. We're not going to see a deal with OpenAI or Google in time for WWDC. That's going to come later this year, most likely. And on a related note, Apple just recently hired dozens of AI experts from Google for a secretive Zurich research lab where they're going to be building new AI models and products. So Apple is really putting a lot of money into AI, as is every other company. They're even poaching Google for their employees, which is pretty interesting. And speaking of Google, it was just revealed this week that Google paid Apple $20 billion in 2022 to be the default Safari search engine. And this was revealed in court documents that Google had to provide in its antitrust dispute with the US. So before we talk about iOS 17.5 and Apple's big surprise that they have planned for next week, let's talk about a couple of app updates, starting with the Claude AI chatbot application that was just launched this week from Anthropic. So if you don't know what Claude is, it's just another AI model that really differs quite a bit actually from ChatGPT, especially when it comes to coding and just the overall responses. They're a lot more, I don't want to say accurate, but they're a lot more direct, and they're not really trying to be human-like with the responses. However, it's not super accurate. As you can see here, I took a picture of my AirPods Max case, which granted, this is a very hard thing to discern, but I asked what this is. This is something cool you can do with this in the application. You can take a picture and say, ask what it is. And they said it was a VR headset. I said wrong. And, a couple of times they said it was wrong. And then I had to tell them it was an AirPods Max case. Now, you could chat with Claude 3 Sonnet, but there is no voice search yet. So it still lacks in voice search, which is my favorite thing in ChatGPT. But the application is great overall. And here's another example. I just asked, what's the best plan for someone trying to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks? And it says trying to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks is an extremely aggressive and potentially unhealthy goal. Here's some more realistic advice. So you can see what they list there. So it's a little bit different from ChatGPT. And there are certain scenarios where I prefer Claude over ChatGPT, but you could just try it out here if you would like to. It's pretty interesting and a pretty, simple, nice application. And speaking of nice applications, the Arc search browser just got an update this week. And you can see here, we now have new widgets. So you can see my home screen widget right here. If I tap on search, it allows me to go ahead and search right away from that widget, which is really nice. And we have a nice animation. You could also use voice and spaces. And that voice search is something new in this update. So when you tap on that, you can see you get this really nice animation, and it will search after you get done with that voice. So awesome application. I love it. Also, when you tap right here, we do have some new options for page zoom and request desktop site. But Arc Search is awesome. And this is essentially what I would expect Apple to do with Safari and iOS 18, where you can just pinch, for example, on here, and it will summarize this long article for you in great bullet points with some great graphics next to it as well. You can see how short this is, but if you go to the actual article, you can see it's a pretty extensive article. So it really shortens it up and makes it easy to read and summarize that web page for you. So that's what I'm hoping Apple does with Safari and iOS 18. Also this week, Ubisoft announced their new Assassin's Creed Mirage game. So this is going to be available for the iPhone 15 Pro series and also for the iPad Air and iPad Pro with the M1 chip or later. Now, this is going to be free to play for the first 90 minutes, and then it is going to cost $50, which is pretty expensive, but this is going to be like console level gaming on your device. Okay, so now let's move on to iOS 17.5 and what is new in the software as of this past week, because as you know, we just got the release of Beta 4 this past week. And while it seemed like a minor update on the surface, there was actually one of the biggest features in all of iOS 17.5 that was implemented into this update. And this is called repair state. So it's a new repair state feature that allows you to keep Find My enabled when sending an iPhone in to Apple for repair. So on iOS 17.5 Beta 4, if you go into the Find My application and you try to remove one of your devices that has stolen device protection turned on and also Find My turned on, you will get this alert now that says, cannot remove iPhone, prepare this device for repair. And it says that it's linked to your Apple ID and cannot be removed while it's online, but you can still prepare it for repair. So before, if you sent your device in for repair, there was like a repair mode, but you had to remove the device from your Find My account, and it was only accessible from iCloud on the web. So now this is built into the Find My application, and you don't have to actually remove your device from your account, for it to be sent in for repair. So this is a big deal, especially because stolen device protection can also be bypassed. So So that is a big deal for technicians, and that was a major, pain point that they had. Users would send in their broken iPhone, but it would have stolen device protection turned on, so they'd have to wait an hour until they could repair it. And I've had a couple of people worried about this feature because they were like, well, if somebody can bypass stolen device protection, isn't that like a big deal? Isn't that something that somebody can exploit? And the reality is no, because Find My is still going to be enabled. When you're in the repair state, your iPhone is still going to have Find My enabled, which means it's going to have activation lock enabled. So if somebody did steal your phone, and they were able to bypass the stolen device protection, it wouldn't matter because your phone is still activation locked. They're not going to be able to remove your account from the device. So really, this feature is a win-win for both the consumer and also for repair technicians. So one of the biggest new features in iOS 17.5 is the ability to sideload and download applications from third-party websites in Safari. And you can see you get the app installation screen there in settings. However, that was limited to only iOS and not iPadOS. That is until this week when Apple confirmed that they will be bringing sideloading to iPadOS in the EU later this fall. So they say that EU developers will be able to distribute iPad apps outside of the App Store using alternative app marketplaces or websites, and all of the same terms will apply. Now that's great news. However, there's even better news that Apple revealed this week as well, and that has to do with the €50 or the 0.50 euro core technology fee, and they're tweaking that so that small applications that go viral won't go bankrupt from these absurd fees. So first off, they say that no CTF, no core technology fee, will be required if a developer has no revenue whatsoever. And then also small developers that make less than $10 million annually will not have to pay the CTF for the first 3 years. So both of those changes are excellent if you live in the EU, and it's also a good sign as to what could come in the future to the US if Apple does decide to open up sideloading to all regions. But of course, that is probably not going to happen anytime soon. Also this week, we heard about a major bug that has been plaguing a lot of iPhone users, and this has been going viral on TikTok recently. I'm not sure why recently it's been going viral, because as far as I know, this has been going on for years, but it looks like alarms are not going off for some users, and this was also reported on the Today Show, which was pretty interesting. It says, a rude awakening for some iPhone users. Apple says it's working on a fix to solve an issue causing some alarms not to play a sound. And you can see that there is a video here that shows a lot of different TikToks and people basically reporting that their alarms are not going off. So the fact that Apple has reported that they are working on a fix for this bug is great news, and I would assume that that bug will be fixed in iOS 17.5. Now, in the meantime, something that you can turn off if you are facing this issue, if your alarm is not going off, is inside of Settings, Face ID and Passcode, and then if you go down here to Attention Aware Features, this is something that you might want to turn off, because if your phone thinks that you're looking at it, it's going to lower the volume of some alerts, which includes your alarm. So that might be something you want to disable if you are facing this bug. And then the other main thing that was fixed in iOS 17.5 beta 4 is this wallpaper issue here. So there was a wallpaper bug before that says add new wallpaper sheet does not load any content after restoring a device. So that was a bug on betas 1 through 3, but it was just fixed here in beta 4. Now, as far as the performance goes with iOS 17.5 beta 4, performance has been great for me. I really have zero complaints aside from the minor UI bug that you see down there with the search bar, just kind of having this jittery effect on it every once in a while. But aside from that, performance has been great. I did run multiple Geekbench tests, and we scored about the same as we did in our initial run here. So a 2946 and a 7222. I did run those on my other iPhone 15 Pro Max, my main daily device as well. And I scored pretty much identical to these scores, which is good news because these are pretty decent scores, but no complaints in terms of performance. And I've not really seen you guys complain about performance at all either, which is great. And then when it comes to the battery life has also been awesome here in beta 4. And I rarely say anything about battery life within a week of it releasing because that's not near enough time. But so far, battery life has been great in beta 4. And if I'm looking at my main device here, which by the way, I just switched to an 80% limit because my device was draining faster. So I switched over to an 80% limit on my charging optimization. And so far, maybe that has to do with my battery life being better, but it seems like 17.5 beta 4 also has slightly slightly better battery life than beta 3, which beta 3 was also great for me. But of course, some of you guys are also reporting that battery life is not good, but I see that with literally every single version of iOS. So it's really hard to say if it's a user error or if it's the software. But for me, no complaints. And for most of you guys, it seems like no complaints with battery life either. All right, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So next up is the week of May 6th, and that is a big week because we have the big Apple Let Loose event the next day on May 7th. So I would expect to see the RC build of iOS 17.5 and all the other software get released after that event around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which the event is a little bit early, so it might not come directly after the event, but it will come, that day, I would expect on the 7th. And then, of course, depending on when the new iPads come out, is going to be when we see iOS 17.5 released to the public. However, I would assume that that will be on May 13th. So Monday, May 13th, the following week, is when we should see the final public release of iOS 17.5 and all of the other software versions. And then after that, I would expect iOS 17.6 beta 1 to be released. And of course, we will go through the iOS 17.6 betas at the same time as the iOS 18 betas, which we should see iOS 18 beta 1 on Monday, June 10th, after the Worldwide Developers Conference, after the end of day 1 of WWDC. Okay, so now let's move on to some more Apple news, because this week we heard about a big surprise, a very unexpected surprise that Apple might be unveiling next week. And that is that Apple might be putting the M4 chip in the new iPad Pro and not M3. And this news comes from Mark Gurman. He revealed this information, and it looks like we might be seeing M4 on May 7th. And he said that Apple is going to position this tablet as its first truly AI-powered device, thanks in part to the M4 chip's upgraded neural engine. So if this is true, that would be insane. I mean, Apple would skip M3 completely for the iPad and just go straight to M4, which is good for multiple different reasons. Number one, it's going to give even M2 users a reason to upgrade to M4 because it's, 2 chips newer. So that, number one. Number two, it's going to have I'm assuming a much better neural engine, a much more powerful neural engine, and it's probably going to be, one of the only devices to run certain AI features. So I would expect some of the AI features to only run on M4. They're going to be exclusive to that new iPad, which is also going to get even the previous generation iPad Pro M2 users to potentially or consider upgrading to this new M4 iPad Pro. So that is big news. Obviously, I don't think M4 is going to be like super fast compared to M2. It's not really about the performance for Apple with these chips at this point. It's more just about, especially on the iPads, it's more just about, the AI features and different processing features and things like that. So that is a big surprise, and I cannot wait to see if Apple actually unveils M4 next week. And then we also heard that these iPad Pro models are going to feature, quote, by far the best OLED tablet panels on the market. And this comes from DSCC, who is super accurate. This is who Ross Young works for, and they are typically very accurate when it comes to their leaks and rumors. And then also Mark Gurman said that the next generation Apple Pencil, that's likely coming next week as well, is expected to have haptic feedback for the first time. So it looks like the Apple Pencil will potentially, and this is what I'm hoping, is going to emulate like when you're drawing with a pen versus drawing with a pencil versus drawing with like a marker. You may have different haptic feedback to make it actually feel like you're writing with that specific tool. And that, if that's, what Apple really does, that would be awesome, and that is what would get me to upgrade from my 2nd gen Apple Pencil to the 3rd gen. But as far as anything else to expect at the Let Loose event, I wouldn't really expect anything aside from the iPad Air, iPad Pro, and the Apple Pencil 3rd generation. It's possible we see something else new, but I would say it's unlikely at this point because we've not really heard any rumors about anything else coming. It would be a pretty big surprise if anything else did release. But I think the biggest question marks going into this are if we're going to see M4 on the iPad Pro, which right now it seems like that. And if that's the case, does that mean that the iPad Air is going to get M2 or M3? Because you would assume that maybe it's going to go to M3 instead of the assumed M2, now that iPad Pro could be going to M4. So that's going to be also something very interesting to watch for. And then as far as the AI talk, I would expect Apple to maybe hint at a few AI features at this Let Loose event, but I think the bulk of the AI talk, like 95% of the AI talk, is going to be saved for the Worldwide Developers Conference in June. And then I also wanted to give you an update on the Apple Watch Ultra, because we just saw a new report from Ming-Chi Kuo Info and Mac Rumors, who say that the Apple Watch Ultra 3rd generation is going to get, quote, almost no hardware upgrades this year. And I'm bringing this up because we heard a few months ago that Apple might not be launching another Apple Watch Ultra model this year. They're going to skip a year, but it looks like we are actually going to see an Apple Watch Ultra 3 later this year, but it's going to be pretty much the same as the Apple Watch Ultra 2, which was pretty much the same as the Apple Watch Ultra 1, which in my opinion, this is like the perfect design, so I don't want Apple to change anything, but it's still pretty, disappointing if we have really no changes on at the outside for 2 years in a row after the first one. So that's interesting, but of course things can change by the time it releases in September. And then finally, just as tradition, let's talk about another crazy AirTag story. And this time, a family in North Carolina woke up to an empty garage when thieves stole all of their kids' dirt bikes, all in broad daylight, and it was all caught on a security camera. So the security cameras show 4 thieves sneaking into the family's garage, and they steal not 1, not 2, not 5, but 7 dirt bikes in less than 5 minutes. At the time, the mother was at work, and the father was at work more than 2,000 miles away, and I'm assuming that the kids were in school, they were away from the house. But once the mother realized what happened, she knew what to do, because every single one of those dirt bikes had an AirTag hidden inside. So she pulled up Find My, hopped in her car with her concealed carry, and then tracked them down to a neighborhood in Raleigh, which was multiple cities away. And when driving, she did call the cops to report the theft, and thankfully they arrived before she did. So she led them to the exact location, showing the Find My application to them, and they were able to obtain a search warrant for the trailer that contained all 7 dirt bikes, and they were recovered successfully. However, the trailer was not attached to a car, so it was seemingly abandoned once the thieves realized they were being tracked. So unfortunately, at the time, no suspects have been caught, but they were on camera, so I'm assuming they will get arrested in due time. But that is a pretty crazy story. I've never heard of 7 dirt bikes getting stolen in less than 5 minutes, and then all of them being tracked, with AirTags. That is awesome, and I'm glad that they were able to get them back, but it sucks that nobody was arrested for this crime yet. Just another reminder that anything expensive you own, put an AirTag in it. It doesn't matter what it is, put an AirTag in it. You never know. But that is the latest in the world of Apple. Hope you enjoy the video. I'll see you next time.